Rain had always calmed her, but tonight it brought dread. Mara sprinted down the alley, breath ragged, each footstep splashing against the wet pavement. Streetlights flickered, casting fractured halos through the downpour. Her coat clung to her, soaked and heavy, but she didn't stop. Behind her, there was only the sound of city silence, the kind that whisper when something unnatural had entered the world. 3 nights ago, she started seeing them, reflections in windows where no one stood, strange figures watching from rooftops. At first, she blamed insomnia. Then she stopped sleeping altogether. Tonight, they made contact. It had happened without warning, just a blink between street corners. One moment, she was alone. The next, a black figure stood directly ahead, tall and skeletal, its body cloaked in slick, iridescent fibers that shimmered like oil on water. No eyes, no mouth, just a faint hum, vibrating inside her skull. Then came the pain, sharp, invisible, piercing her nerves like barbed wire threading through her spine. She tried to scream, but the sound dissolved. Her limbs failed her. The city vanished. When she awoke, the first thing she noticed was the cold. It wasn't the kind of cold that bit the skin. It sank deeper into the bones, as if she were submerged in an endless void. Her eyes opened to a ceiling of silver and black, lit by pulses of violet light that throbbed like a heartbeat. Tubes extended from the walls, curving down to her arms. Her hands were strapped, her legs too. Everything around her gleamed with an artificial perfection. A voice, not a sound, but an invasive thought, pierced her mind. Subject, human. Designation, unprocessed. Mara fought against the restraints. Her scream finally came, raw and desperate, but no one responded. Through a transparent wall, she saw movement, figures gliding rather than walking. Their limbs moved in ways that defied bone and joint. Observing, calculating. One approached. Its face was a mask of mirror glass, reflecting her terror back at her. Begin extraction. Pain returned like a flood. At first, it was physical, spikes of heat lancing her nerves, muscles twitching uncontrollably. But quickly it changed, became something more sophisticated. She was remembering things she hadn't lived, running through corridors of black stone, bleeding in a desert under 3 suns, screaming a name she didn't know. They weren't dreams. They were simulations, projected onto her mind with impossible clarity. Her body was a vessel, her mind an open book being torn apart 1 page at a time. Between episodes, she floated. No time, no form, just thoughts and the echo of her own name. Mara, she whispered into the void, as if reminding herself she existed. But the name no longer felt like hers. With each sequence, she felt less human. The pain became expected, then familiar, and finally almost irrelevant. Her mind was adapting. They were watching it happen. In the alien observatory above her cell, 2 beings observed her progress. Neither spoke aloud, but data poured between them in bursts of thought. Cognitive resilience exceeds projections. Cycle 74 complete. Terminate. They did not mean to let her die slowly. Her mind, they had shredded. Her will, tested. It was time for the final measure. A chamber opened in the floor below her. Machinery unfolded, humming with violent promise. Cold metal touched her spine. Then, silence. Nothing. Her body went limp. The machines retracted. Her chest stopped rising. The observers logged the timestamp. Subject deceased. 37 minutes elapsed. In the void, time meant nothing. But Mara was not gone. She drifted, untouched by pain, by thought. The sensation of floating returned, like being curled inside a cocoon. But something was different. The silence wasn't complete anymore. It pulsed, like a faint drumbeat from far away. Then she inhaled, a sharp gasp, a shuddering breath. Her back arched violently, as if reanimated by an unseen force. The restraint snapped. Tubes disconnected. Lights turned red. Somewhere alarm screamed. Her eyes snapped open, glowing faintly with a light that hadn't been there before. In her mind, something had changed. She remembered dying. She remembered everything. Not just what they had done to her, but why. They were looking for something. Not information, not technology. They were looking for a reaction, something purely human, something they couldn't replicate. And they had found it. Mara sat up slowly, each movement stiff, unfamiliar. Her body had been changed, regrown, perhaps reinforced. She wasn't sure how she was still alive, but she was sure of one thing. They didn't expect her to come back. She looked at her reflection in the mirrored glass. Her eyes were not the same. Her body was healing before her eyes. And deep within her, beneath layers of rage, trauma, and raw confusion, was something dangerous, a new kind of understanding. She whispered again, but this time not in fear. "Mara," and the walls began to tremble. The first breath hurt. It clawed its way into Mara's lungs like fire, violent, involuntary. Her vision swam in liquid light, each pulse of her heartbeat echoing like thunder in her ears. The sterile chamber was in disarray, lights flickering, sirens blaring in incomprehensible tones. She lay curled on the floor, coughing up fluid, trembling. But she was alive, alive when she should be ash in memory. She dragged herself upright, pressing a bloodless hand to the wall for balance. Her body was alien to her. Stronger, yes, but taut like a wire stretched to its limit. Every nerve seemed alert, each breath a knife edged with clarity. Her skin shimmered faintly under the emergency lights, as though soaked in stardust. No footsteps, no voices, just machinery buzzing in her own ragged breaths. She turned toward the shattered containment capsule that had once held her corpse. The glass was cracked from the inside. "Not possible," a voice whispered. But it wasn't hers. She froze. The thought hadn't come from her own mind. It had slid in, uninvited, sharp and precise. Someone or something was inside her thoughts. A second presence. Observing. She reached instinctively for the voice and felt it recoil. The door hissed open. A figure stood there, one of the observers. Thin, faceless, wrapped in sleek membranes of dark matter. It did not move forward. It watched, or perhaps measured. She could feel it probing her, not with sight, but with intent. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. A single step, then another. The alien backed away. Mara surged forward, grabbing the edge of the doorframe. She wasn't thinking. She was moving. Her fingers wrapped around the being's neck, not out of revenge, but instinct. Her touch seared the creature's skin. Smoke hissed from its throat as it shrieked in frequencies her ears weren't meant to hear. It collapsed. She staggered back, horrified. I didn't mean... But she had. The heat in her hands faded. She flexed her fingers, shaken. Her touch had burned it, killed it. No weapon, no intent, just existence. Footsteps echoed down the corridor now. The others were coming. Panic would have been the natural response, but instead, a strange calm spread through her veins. Her fear was being drowned by something deeper, programming. She closed her eyes, and the world unfolded. Schematics, hallways, power grids. She could see the station's layout. Every corridor, every chamber, lit up in her mind as though she'd lived here her entire life. This knowledge wasn't stolen. It had been implanted. She ran. The corridor ahead twisted, sloped downward, then opened into a viewing hall. Massive windows framed the stars outside, thousands of them, bleeding light into the void. The Earth was nowhere in sight. No planets, no moons, just black. And the structure surrounding her, gargantuan, humming with life, was not a ship. It was a station, floating in interstellar isolation. She pressed a hand to the glass, her mind spinning. They hadn't just studied her. They had used her. In a reflection on the window, her face stared back, hers, yet different, eyes brighter, skin unblemished. And beneath the surface, something pulsed. She turned, drawn by an impulse she didn't understand. Deeper into the station, she found a chamber unlike the others. Organic, breathing walls lined with translucent pods. Inside them, others. Human, maybe. Some still twitching, others motionless. All of them wired into the walls like roots into soil. She approached one, a girl no older than 10. Eyes closed, mouth slack, her skin bruised by repeated probing, a scar above her eyebrow. It twitched as Mara leaned in. They were still experimenting. Rage burned in her throat. She looked up at the wall of interfaces. Light blooming across glyphs she couldn't read yet understood. She raised a hand. The symbols flared, resisting. Then they bowed. A hiss. Then another. The pod began to open. Mara stumbled back as steam filled the room. Some of the bodies stirred, groaning, half-conscious. Others didn't move at all. But the moment she touched the console, she felt a thread connecting her to each of them. Faint, but real. Not just through empathy, through something deeper. She wasn't the only one changed. Heavy doors opened behind her. More of the beings filed in, their motion swift, no longer curious, afraid. She stepped between them and the recovering humans. Her hands curled into fists, glowing faintly. They halted. One of the beings stepped forward, not the same as the others. Taller, draped in a robe of shifting black silk. Its presence pushed against her thoughts like a tide. It spoke, not with words, but images. You are not meant to awaken. She stood her ground, heart pounding. I wasn't meant to survive either. The alien's mask darkened. Your mind is corrupted. She smiled, teeth bared. Then let me show you what corruption looks like. With a wave of her hand, every interface in the chamber overloaded. Sparks burst from the ceiling. Lights exploded. The beings hissed and retreated. Behind her, the survivors stirred, coughing and crawling from the pods. Something inside her screamed that this was only the beginning. But she had a plan now, and nothing would stop her from getting home. The station trembled beneath Mara's feet, subtle vibrations rippling through the metal floor, as if the structure itself sensed her defiance. Behind her, the survivors huddled, still disoriented, barely grasping the reality of their freedom. Some sobbed quietly. Others stared, hollow-eyed. None spoke. She felt their confusion pressing against her skin like a second layer. They were frightened, but not just of the aliens, of her. She couldn't blame them. Her footsteps echoed as she moved down the corridor, the overhead lights sputtering in her wake. Something had shifted since she touched the control hub. She didn't just access the system. She rewrote it. Security thresholds fell before her. Biometric locks disengaged at her approach, and the station's core systems whispered to her like old friends. She was no longer an intruder. She was something else entirely. A console lit up ahead, glowing with alien script. As she neared, the glyphs reassembled into images. Streams of data, surveillance footage, neural scans. Her scan, dozens of them. Charts mapping brainwaves, emotional peaks, pain thresholds. Her face, twisted in agony, cataloged across pages like a specimen. Next to hers, hundreds more. Failed experiments, incompatible subjects, discarded humans. A quiet fury took hold. They hadn't wanted to destroy her. They had wanted to perfect her. A sudden rush of thoughts not her own surged through her mind, raw and unfiltered. A cascade of alien dialogue, full of uncertainty and debate. She couldn't understand every word, but the intention was clear. Her resurrection wasn't an accident. It was a variable, a test within a test. They had built her, not broken her. A hum rose in the corridor as another presence approached. Mara turned, fists clenched, only to stop short. It wasn't one of them. It was a girl, no older than Mara herself had been when her world still made sense. Thin, pale, eyes sunken but alert. She wore a collar of circuitry, dimly lit with red pulses. The girl tilted her head. You're not like them. Mara hesitated. Neither are you. A long pause, then a nod. I hear them, all the time, like bees in my head. What's your name? The girl's lips twitched, as if she had forgotten what names were. Elia, that's what my brother called me, before they took him. Mara knelt, her voice softening. Where is he now? Elia looked up at the ceiling. Gone. They called him a failure, but he screamed when they turned off the lights. I remember that. Mara stood slowly, hand hovering just above the girl's shoulder before letting it fall. Come with me. We're going to find answers. Together, They descended deeper into the station's core. The walls here were different, less mechanical, more organic, as though the structure had grown rather than been built. Vines of bioluminescent tubing crawled along the ceiling. The air thickened, and the voice inside Mara's head grew louder. They reached a chamber unlike the others, spherical, its walls lined with suspended forms. Not humans, not quite aliens, something in between. Mara stepped forward, eyes scanning the faces floating in amber fluid. One of them matched her own. It was her, a replica, or perhaps an original. The face was peaceful, eyes closed, unmarred. "What is this?" she whispered. A deep, echoing vibration answered, not from the room, but from within her. A library of selves. Prototypes. Failures. You are the anomaly. She spun, heart pounding. The tall figure from before stood in the entrance, cloaked in shadow and light, its presence immense. "Why me?" she demanded. "What do you want from us?" "You endured. You adapted. You became more. I became what you made me. A weapon? A mirror." The word struck her like a blow. "You tortured me," she said, voice rising. "You killed me, and you returned. No other subject has ever crossed that threshold." Mara stepped forward, fury and purpose colliding in her chest. "Then maybe you made a mistake." The figure did not flinch. "You were meant to fail. Your resurrection was not planned. You have rewritten the outcome. Now you are ungoverned." She reached toward the closest chamber. The glass cracked beneath her touch. Fluid hissed. The clone's eyes fluttered but did not open. "I'm not your mirror," Mara said. "I'm your consequence." Behind her, Elia took a shaky step forward, eyes wide with understanding. "You can end them, can't you?" Mara didn't answer. She didn't need to. She raised her hand again, and the chamber walls began to ripple. Sirens blared. The station shifted, groaned. Somewhere far above, containment systems buckled. Alarms screamed and frequencies meant to paralyze. But Mara walked through them unfazed, Elia close behind. Whatever they had awakened inside her was no longer bound by fear or pain or death. It moved with her, pulsed in her bones, and sang with each thought she directed into the station's neural spine. She had answers now. She had power. And she was just beginning to learn how to use it. The station was coming apart. Every step Mara took echoed like a drumbeat of resistance. The corridors writhed under flickering light, the walls pulsing with an erratic heartbeat that was no longer entirely mechanical. The system was collapsing. She could feel it, hearing the rupturing code that sang across her mind like a chorus of broken voices. She had become the virus in their perfect order, the flaw they never accounted for. Elia followed silently, barefoot, her expression unreadable. She hadn't spoken since the chamber. Something in her had changed. Some burden awakened. Mara sensed it in the way she kept her hands clenched tight at her sides, in the way her gaze refused to settle. "They're evacuating," Mara said, eyes half closed as she absorbed the station's fleeing data. "Or trying to. The protocols are locked." "You did that?" Elia asked. Mara nodded. "They try to make me into something obedient. Instead, they gave me access to their entire system. I've locked the exits. They're caged in with us now." Elia's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. The main transit shaft lay ahead, its massive doors forced ajar by the tremors that had begun to rock the station. Inside, the vertical tunnel stretched endlessly in both directions. Mara glanced upward, her gaze narrowing at the surge of heat signatures clustered near the top. Dozens of them, maybe more. "They're waiting," she murmured. "For you," Elia said. Mara stepped into the shaft and let gravity take her. Her body dropped fast, faster than it should have, but the strange physics of the station warped around her. She landed weightlessly, a whisper against the platform below. The final chamber opened before her like a blooming wound. Spacious, circular, lined with throne-like array of alien machinery. Above it all hovered the central core, a lattice of crystal and code, pulsing like a living brain. And they were there, 6 of them. The architects, not soldiers, not watchers, These were different, taller, wrapped in layers of luminous fabric that didn't move with air but with thought. Their faces were veiled behind cascading light, their presence pressed against Mara's chest like invisible stone. They didn't speak, but their minds reached toward her as one. The cycle ends here. She stepped forward. Not the way you intended. You are unstable, corrupted by your own instincts. You call it corruption, she said, but it's will, it's memory. It's the scream you couldn't erase, the part of me that chose to return. The air crackled. One of the beings extended a hand, and a surge of force slammed into her. She staggered backward but did not fall. Instead, she reached into herself, not into muscles or memory, but something deeper. The code they had planted. The energy that had once been a leash. Now it was a weapon. She lifted her hand and pushed back. The core behind them dimmed. Light exploded through the room as two of the architects collapsed, their forms unraveling into fractal shadows. The others recoiled, shifting into defensive postures, but Mara was already moving, gliding through the air like a thought given form. You built this place as a crucible, she said, each word laced with the resonance of power. A forge for your next evolution. You thought we were weak because we felt, because we broke. The chamber bent inward. Panels cracked. The walls wept molten circuitry. But you never understood, she whispered. What breaks can rebuild. She turned as Elia entered, her small form glowing now, faint but unmistakable. Her eyes were blank white, her body hovering an inch above the ground. Mara reached out, not to command, but to connect. A shared bond flared between them. And for the first time, Mara saw the truth. Elia wasn't a child anymore. She was a conduit. She's part of the network, Mara realized. You used her to maintain balance. You tied your systems into a human mind. She was compatible. She was suffering. Mara snapped. Elia's hands lifted, and with them, the chamber convulsed. One of the remaining architects tried to speak, but his voice disintegrated in the rising storm. The core began to crack, leaking threads of golden light. Mara, Elia said softly, her voice reverberating through the structure. I can feel them, all of them, still connected, still trapped. Then help me set them free. Together, they reached into the system, not as invaders, but as liberators. They turned the station's own mind against itself. Doors flung open across dimensions. Pods dissolved. Chains of code unraveled like dust. Millions of echoes fled into the void, fragments of stolen minds at last unbound. The station screamed. It shuddered, cracked, and began to collapse. Mara turned to Elia. Can you make it? Elia nodded, though her eyes were dimming. Go. I'll hold it. Just long enough. No. Elia touched her arm. You gave me a choice. Let me make it. The walls folded inward. Energy boiled around them. Mara ran. The emergency launch bay was barely intact. One pod remained, scorched and crooked. She dove inside, slammed the console, and felt the lurch of gravity reverse. Through the viewport, she saw the station implode, light bending around it as if the universe itself rejected its existence. And then silence, darkness. Mara floated in the escape pod, alone with a silence that was earned, not inflicted. Her reflection stared back at her, exhausted, change infinite. Somewhere far below, Earth turned in quiet orbit. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, not alien, not foreign, but hers. This is not the end. And she believed it.